So today we are reviewing the ripple effect of social media on youth well-being. It's going to be presented by Dr. Julie Radler, and I'll introduce her on the next slide here. So Dr. Julie Radler is a CEO, the CEO of Collectively, Radler Venture Incorporated, and she has over 25 years of experience in human services, in the human services field in all different types of capacities. She's also an experienced trainer and coach at an individual and organizational level and community level. So we're very lucky to have her and excited for her presentation today. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get this party started. I'm so excited to spend some time with you all today. Thank you for being here. We're going to get started right off the bat with just a quick kind of check-in activity. And so, as a trainer, I don't usually ask people to pick up their cell phones because that's a little distracting, but I'm going to ask you to pick up your cell phones. And we're going to just do a quick little assessment of ourselves and our own social media use. So, if you can grab your cell phone and go to the settings app that's on your cell phone. Give you a second to find it. We're going to do some math together. So if you have an Apple phone, you're going to scroll down in the settings app to screen time. If you have an Android, you're going to scroll, I think it's called digital well-being. And I want you to just kind of click on that, and it will tell you what your daily average is for your cell phone use. And you don't need to get into like the nitty gritty of like when you use which apps or whatever for this process. Just what is that number there and kind of round it, right? So round it either up or round it down, whichever. Um, and then once you have your number identified, if you don't see a number there, it means that you've turned your screen time off. And I encourage you to turn it on because even if you don't do the activity today because you don't have a number, in the future you'll be able to do it. And you, of course, can have copies of these slides, or you can just take a screenshot of this slide. So let's just say that your number is 5 hours. Okay, so that, or five, right? So that's 5 hours. Now, keep that five in your heads and now go to your calculator app and let's do some math. So we're going to take that five number for 5 hours a day, and we're going to multiply it by seven. So that gets us 35. Then we're going to multiply it by 52 because there's 52 weeks in a year, and that gets us 1,820. Then we're going to divide it by 24 because there's 24 hours in a day. Okay. And then that number, which is 75 for me, for the five, then you're going to divide it by 30 because there's 30 days in a month. And so that number comes out to 2.5. If you're comfortable, you can kind of put your number into the chat right now. So how do you get the number? You get the number from your screen time app. Okay, so I see Camillo came up with the thing. It's that 2.5, or I see numbers in here too, 1.5, 4, right? 4.55. That means that's not hours. That's 4.55 is hours. But if it says six, I see somebody here has a six. That number six means that you spend 6 months on your phone, 6 months out of a year on your phone. And I think that that's important for us to realize. If it's two, that means you spend 2 months out of every year on your phone. Now, before you beat yourself up over it, let's just say a lot of us use our phones for many things. Like, for example, GPS. If you use your phone for GPS to drive all around, that counts towards your screen time. Texting, cell phone, of course, social media. If you watch YouTube, if you listen to music, it's in your number. If you, like me, sometimes I listen to meditation before I go to bed, and then I fall asleep after 5 minutes, but my phone still goes for however long the meditation is, right? So that there's that too. And so there's no judgment-free zone, no judgment. And if you don't use your phone for something like music and you listen to music all day long, or GPS and you're constantly driving and you realize your number is pretty high, that's something to pay attention to. The other thing is, if you use your phone a lot and you're kind of struggling a little bit or feeling like lonely or isolated, or you're feeling, a little bit like your mental health is impacted and you have a high usage rate, well, that might be something to consider if you're looking for a way to kind of boost yourself and change your mental health. There might be something to consider. I share this activity with you, and I see you. Thank you guys so much for putting info in the chat and sharing with each other. And again, take a screenshot. This is a great activity to do with the people that you work with your own children, your friends, to get a sense of, how much social media usage there is. And we're going to be using this information kind of later on in the presentation. So excellent work, everybody. So let's talk a little bit about this. When you look at this data, let's talk for a moment about youth behavior trends, okay? And it's interesting because you notice, like, if you look at the light green, it says never drank alcohol or ever drank alcohol, never tried cigarettes, or watching television, having sexual intercourse, using marijuana. Right? All of these things are going down. And we think, well, that's not actually a bad thing if our, teenagers are not doing these things. But what do you notice that's going up? And that's the playing the video games. So many of the behaviors that young people typically experience as part of kind of growing up, they are no longer doing those things because they're spending more time on video games and on their social media. So much so that the cell phone is now identified as this generation's third space or third place: home, school, cell phone. It's their third space. That's where they spend the majority of their time when they're not in home and in school. And so if you think back to your younger days and your childhood, all of these things that are now going down are things that was kind of a rite of passage. And so our younger generation, they're not experiencing these things, which is impacting their mental health. So let's talk about how much time we spend with our friends. And when you look at this slide here, you see that the numbers are going down, right? The numbers of how much time we spend with friends is going down for everybody, significantly for young people, but everybody on this call right now, in this webinar, your numbers are going down too. So it's not just our young people, it's every generation. And the amount of time that we spend with others is going down. And now let's look at this. And I want you to pay attention to this 2012. Okay. You see this, that's called a trending line. And that means that there's statistical significance that beyond this date, the numbers started trending downward. Okay. So around 2012. Now, look at this slide. And this slide represents suicide, self-poisoning, major depressive episodes, depressive symptoms, right? And you notice the numbers are going way up. What year are the numbers starting to go way up? What do you notice? 2012, right? Interesting. So, what do you think happened in 2012? I see when the iPhone was introduced in the chat, right? So that's exactly right. And not the iPhone, it's actually the smartphone. So we had flip phones prior to where, if you wanted to send a text, it was like dot, 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 right? And it took a long time to send a text. Then all of a sudden in 2012, they introduced the smartphone, which is lots of colors, that all the apps with notifications, everything is on one place, right? GPS, photos, texting, emails, music, right? So it's all right there. And we noticed that we've got significant increase in suicide, self-poisoning, depression episodes, right? So you can't say, without a shadow of a doubt, that's exactly what happened, but the data says that that is what's happening and contributing to our current mental health crisis. So let's look at the data. According to WHO, the World Health Organization, 1 billion people are suffering from mental health conditions globally. We have this echo pandemic. This is post-COVID. And so there's recognition that post-COVID, mental health has, poor mental health has increased. 94% of teens use social media. 95% of teens have smartphones, and 45% of teens say that they use social media constantly. That's the language on the assessment, and 45% of them said they use it constantly, meaning it is like an appendage to their hand. And there is a positive correlation between social media's usage and depression, meaning it's not causation, like one didn't necessarily cause the other. And I'll share more information about that moving forward, but there's a correlation between the two. So the US Surgeon General advises that social media platforms for only 13 and older, but nearly 40% of children ages 8 to 12 are using social media, right? And so that's significant. In 2021, eighth and 10th graders are spending about 3.5 hours per day on social media. That's why I mentioned it's become their third space, right? Where they spend their time when they're not at home and in school. 46% of adolescents that are 13 to 17 reported that social media doesn't make them feel good about themselves. And 64% said that they are exposed to hate-based content often or sometimes. I imagine that number is actually a little bit higher given what's happening in our world. 75% of people report that social media sites are doing a poor job of addressing harassment, cyberbullying, and 3 out of 4 teenagers say that they know technology companies are manipulating them, and yet that's their social space. So our young people spend an average of 3.5 hours online. And physiologically speaking, like the actual brain matter, when when you spend that much time online, it shrinks part of your brain, which impacts neuroplasticity. And so, why do we need neuroplasticity? Because that's how we think and learn. Social media does something that called captures and scatters our attention, meaning that you can be in the middle of something else, you see something, it changes your perspective and scatters what you're doing. And you're kind of like, well, what was I doing before I started scrolling on social media? Right. And what this does is it's detrimental to our brain, this capturing aspect of it. So the research demonstrates that heavy social media users, which is more than 3.5 hours, 3.5 hours or more, they perform worse on cognitive tests. They lose their ability to multitask because they get distracted and don't remember what they were doing. It's harder to stay focused and they actually lose memory. Being on social media makes us feel addicted because it's the same mechanism for addiction. When you spend time on social media and you are scrolling and you see something you like, you get a hit of dopamine, right? And so that dopamine makes you feel good. So you want more of it and you're going to scroll more and more and more because you get dopamine, dopamine, dopamine. Typically, when we get dopamine, it's because we've done something for it, right? You run a race and you win, you get the dopamine, right? Or you get a good grade, you get the dopamine. But this, we're just sitting and scrolling and we get dopamine. So when we stop and put the phone down, what does our body do? It craves the dopamine, right? Because we just got a lot of it and we want more and more and more. And that's the feeling of addiction. So when you put the phone down and you don't spend time with it, you then experience sadness. And that's the dopamine release, which makes us feel worse, right? So it is physiologically changing what's happening both in our brain as well as in our bodies, hormonally speaking, with dopamine. So, from ages 10 to 19, brain development is really sensitive. And so that's when, if you think about it, our kids are risky. They're in good moods and bad moods for no reason. And mental health, typically, if you have true mental health challenges, that's when it typically emerges, right? Also, the adolescent brain, it identifies our self-worth is forming. And so when you're watching things on social media and comparing yourselves to others and peer pressure and cyberbullying, that impacts you more in that age range because you haven't developed the kind of the coping mechanisms. And frequent social media use is associated with changes in brain development, right? In our social emotional learning, in our impulse control, emotional regulation, and our ability to moderate our social behaviors. And so it's really important for us to recognize that the adolescent brain is a time when we want to keep kids away from social media as much as possible, though sadly, all of their friends are on it, so they want to be on it too. So what do young people say? A quarter of you say that they're on it constantly, that they look to social media for support, advice, and to feel less lonely. Young people these days will talk to ChatGPT as though it were a friend. Hey, I'm going out tonight. What should I wear? It used to be something that you would ask a friend, right? But now you're just asking your phone. And the majority say that social media is important for their fun and entertainment, for communicating with their friends, for unwinding when they're stressed out, or even as a creative outlet, right? So it's not all bad. And I think that that's important as we say, okay, we'll put the phone away and you can't have access to it. But there are some positives to social media too. 40% say that it cheers them up when they're feeling sad, stressed, or anxious. But they percent say it actually makes them feel worse. And almost three quarters use it when they're bored. And I think that's really important for us to recognize that, you're sitting there and you're kind of like, "Ugh, I'm bored, I don't know what to do," and you pick up your phone, right? And so what that does is it stops you from being creative, from having habits or activities that are stimulating to you, because it's just so easy to pick up the phone. Well, there is some good news. So young people are limiting their social media use, and it can be healthier. More than three quarters in the previous 12 months took measures to control their social media use, right? They are recognizing that it's not good for them, and they are trying to spend more time off of social media. It's actually a little bit of a movement for the younger generation to kind of put the phone away and to not be on all the time. Like they are realizing it themselves without us having to tell them. Um, and the older adolescents, high school, college age, are more likely to do this. So half of all young adults say it interferes with their sleep if you have the phone in the room, and over 50% of young adults believe that social media really hurt their attention span. So we need to work with our teens to help them understand this, because once they get to be a little bit older, they begin to know it themselves. Again, there's good and there's bad, right? So some of the pros, well, it certainly is convenient and it is, of course, a tool for productivity. And also it's allowed us to have friends outside of our immediate, circle. Like you can actually talk to people all over the world. Now, some of the cons, well, we sacrifice connection because we're addicted to this thing. It is clearly a huge distraction. And there's research now that it changes brain mechanisms, right? So when I mentioned earlier about, there a correlation, so there is what's called a reciprocal relationship between social media and mental health. So based on longitudinal studies, social media predicts less life satisfaction, and less life satisfaction also predicts increased social media use, right? That's the reciprocal relationship. When I'm depressed, I sit on my phone. When I'm sitting on my phone, I'm depressed, right? And so this relationship, this reciprocal relationship means that for people who are already coming to the table with some mental health challenges, we need to help them not spend time on the phone and get out and spend more time with people in human form, if you will. Let's talk a little bit about application use. So there's some research around how much time is like the sweet spot, if you will, for how much time you spend on social media. And so looking at this slide here, you can see some of the different apps that are available and then how much time. So you say we're talking about YouTube, for example. When I spend 23 minutes, 28 minutes on YouTube, I feel pretty good about myself, right? When I spend over an hour, 68 minutes on YouTube, I'm like, oh, where has my time gone? Now, I think it's different if you're watching a movie on YouTube versus if you're just doom scrolling, scrolling with, and, keeping it moving with shorts. And that's part of what the research is demonstrating now, is that those short videos, like the reels that you see, are much worse for you than if you're engaged in an actual, digital activity. Looking at Instagram, if I spend 28 minutes on Instagram, I feel pretty good about myself. If I spend 57 minutes, I'm like, ugh, where did that hour go? Right. And so I love to show this because I think it gives people this sense of like, I can touch it, I can spend time on it. I just need to, everything in moderation, right? I need not to go all in on how much time I spend. So There's Harvard research that identifies the ways that that people can use social media impacts our mental health differently, right? And so I think that's important for us to recognize too. So for some people who are what we call active users, meaning that they are commenting, liking, posting, participating in the use of social media, they have better mental health outcomes than people who are what we call passive users, which is like you don't, you're like a voyeur, like you're not participating in it, you're just scrolling and observing what others do. That makes us feel less connected. And there's more stress related to our usage, like we feel bad about ourselves, right? But if I'm communicating with people, I'm connecting with people, I'm engaged, I'm like, hey, it looks like you had fun yesterday. And then that person writes back to me, yeah, it was a great, whatever. We're connecting. And that's okay, right? That's better than if I'm just scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. So when you talk to the people that you work with about their usage, um, you want to ask them what do they typically do when they're online, right? That's a great way to, engage in a conversation. Like, what are you watching and what are you looking at and who do you talk to? That's why the shorts are not so great, is because you can get sucked in and spend a lot of time on it, but there's no engagement, right? It's just I'm watching, but I'm not participating in it. And so that's one of the things that really kind of decreases our mental health experience. And so, talking about some habit scrolling, if you will, I want you to take a moment and I want you to think about yourself. Pay attention to what makes you start scrolling. So, we call those our triggers. And it means that something is making us want to do that behavior, right? So, either we're bored or our friends are online and we want to spend time with them, or we're avoiding something that we want to do. I don't feel like cleaning my room. I'm just going to sit here and scroll. And I'm going to ask you to put into the chat, most of the time when you reach for social media, why do you think you do that? Are there particular times of day that you do that? Like I know for me, when I'm getting ready, like at the end of the day, 10 o'clock, I want to like sit down and finally go for the day. That's when I reach for my phone, right? And that's when I try to catch up with people and see what's happening, right? So it's my relaxation, but it's not letting my brain relax. And in fact, if I use the phone at 10 o'clock, that means I shouldn't go to bed until after 11. Because what it does is it tricks my brain into thinking that I'm awake and it's waking time, because of what's happening from the blue lights on the phone. And so one of the suggestions for putting your phone away is you should spend the last hour of your awake time not on your phone, which will ensure that you have a better sleep cycle. So you also want to think about like what are some of the potential triggers that might make me want to use my phone and what can I do or change something about it. So I love that you guys are putting some stuff into the chat here. I see boredom, 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 and that's what the research demonstrates too, right? Is that we're kind of bored. We just want to like have some downtime, and we reach for our phone. And if you didn't have your phone, what might you be doing? And I think that's the thing that's really important. Yeah, I see I can't sleep, so I grab my phone, and then the phone will stop you from going back to sleep. And that happens to me all the time, right? No judgment here. I think what's important about all of this is the conversation that you'll have with yourself about, well, okay, is it okay? Or do I want to do something about it? If I find myself in the middle of the night, I wake up and then I'm scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. Well, that's going to stop me from going back to sleep. And then eventually, I'll just get so tired that I'll fall asleep. But then I've had poor sleep. And because I was on my phone, the sleep that I do have after I was awake, is not high quality sleep with REM sleep, right? So, I think this really is about self-awareness and again, giving you tools that you can use with the people that you work with, so that you can help them begin to do things differently if they experience that as a problem. Okay, good job, you guys. Thank you for sharing. So let's talk a little bit about, when it goes south. Um, some of the problems. One is it decreases our face-to-face time, right? Our social connections. I love that it's Protective Factor Month. here at CalTrin, and social connections is one of the protective factors, right? And so if I'm spending less time with humans and more time on my phone, I'm not connecting the way I should. And the data demonstrates that when you spend time with somebody in human form, it's better for you mentally and physically than if you connect with somebody digitally. Right. And so, again, it's about how much time do you spend? What's the moderation? We can't at this point expect that people are not going to be on their phones because, of course, they are. Right. And not just because we're all addicted, which most of us are, but also because we have to go back to it. Right. We have to go back to it for checking our emails. We have to go back to it because our children are checking in out with us and whatnot. Right. I find this really interesting. There's a stronger connection between social media and mental health experience than there is between binge drinking and mental health, sexual assault and mental health, obesity and mental health, and hard drug use and mental health. Social media impacts our mental health more than all of those things. And so I'm so happy that just in the last couple of years, we as a nation have come, as a world, really, globally, we've come to recognize that social media is really harmful for us. But when you see it compared to things like sexual assault, you're like, I had no idea, right? And those addictive qualities, they keep you coming back for more. And that's because of, you know, the dopamine hits that we get from watching it. 24% of young people report that they've been cyberbullied in the last 30 days. And if you just read any comments, probably from any post, you will find things that people would never say to somebody in person. Yet we see the most horrific things being written in just the comment sections of somebody that posts, spending time with a friend, right? And there's this level of anonymity, perhaps. But even for young people, it doesn't have to be anonymity, right? They could, for kids that are in middle school and high school, they put things in the chat. I was just reading about something. A college student, she went to a party. She drank too much. She passed out. She was completely clothed in the original picture, but somebody took the picture of her that was passed out at the party, put it in AI, and made it look like she was not wearing any clothes. And then they started posting the pictures all over the place, right? And so, how does that affect that young person? And there's no way to tell who did it, right? And it wasn't even her body; it was an AI version of her body, but nonetheless, nobody knows that. And so she was given an interview, and she had dyed her hair a different color. Like it was really impacting her because she was walking around campus and everybody was making fun of her and laughing at her, right? And so, how much is that going to impact her moving forward, right? Yeah, and somebody said, yeah, it's all over the place right now on X. Yeah, it was very recently, so don't go look it up, please. But yes, it's something that's like I just saw the interview like yesterday or the day before. Sadly, our girls are much more vulnerable because they experience mental health issues related to social media at much higher rates. A lot of it has to do with body image for young girls, and girls are also comparing themselves to others much more than boys do. Social media also is related to decreased sleep, increased depression, memory loss, poor academic performance. It's also really, challenging. Like even one of my sons, when he was growing up, he was on the spectrum. And when he was in middle school, his friends started getting social media. And he had really good friends in school, but they would do things outside of school and not include him. And I knew about it. It always hurt my feelings, but he didn't know about it. And so I was very intentional about not letting him have access to social media because I didn't want him to see that his friends were, going out and playing football and not including him. But he was not included in a lot of things because of his, the way his spectrum behaviors. And so I was, it was so hard for me because, of course, I wanted him to be included and it hurt me, but I didn't want him to know about it. And I think that, fear of missing out and not being included in things really, really, hurts our young people as well. And then when I'm talking to young people about what to post and what not to post, I always talk about the mom test. Basically, the mom test is don't post anything you wouldn't want your mom to see. Which is a pretty good barometer for people. That doesn't, for young people, that doesn't mean that they're still going to not post it because lots of kids do things that they don't want their mom, that they wouldn't want their moms to see. But it's a good, like internal way to determine should I do this or shouldn't I do this is like, what would my mom say if she saw that I posted this? And so that's a good guideline that I like to share with young people. So, um, when you're working with people that are really using a lot of social media, or when I work with parents, I will tell them, this is what you need to look for when it's time to really get help. Like it's gone too far. So one is that they completely change their mood, right? So excessive social media use leads to changes in behavior. Anybody here have younger children and you give them, 15, 20 minutes to play a game on the tablet. And then when you say, okay, that's enough time, you're done, and they have a complete meltdown, right? Well, that's somewhat typical for young children that haven't yet learned how to manage their emotions, though if they were playing with a toy and you took it away from them, would there be the same response? If the answer is yes, okay, great. If the answer is no, then you have to think about like what are they getting from this digital toy that they're not getting from their other toys, and then bring that into teenage years and even older. By that point, young people should be able to learn to manage their emotions. And so, if they're playing a video game and you say that's it, no more video games, and they, have a fit, well, there's something to be paying attention to. That's when we really need to get some help, right? The other is there's just like a total preoccupation with social media use. And so, for young people, like they literally walk around with an appendage in their hand. Remember, very high percentage say that they use it constantly. Okay. But that's different than completely living on social media, right? If I'm communicating with my friends through texting, that's very different than I'm constantly on Instagram, I'm constantly on Snapchat. The other is tolerance, which is that they need to use social media more and more and more. So almost like an obsession. And so when they can't be an hour without it. That's something that we should be paying attention to. In my house, we don't have phones at the table at the dinner table. And my children know this. They know that they're not allowed to bring a phone to the table. They're not supposed to have it in their pockets, even, right? Leave it in your rooms for the hour that we're sitting at the table together. I have several children, and my older ones, like they're in this, I'm actually an adult now. You can't tell me what to do because they're in college. And they will bring it to the table. And I'm still like, nope, no, whether we're out at a restaurant or we're, sitting at our dining room table in our house having dinner together, no, right? And so if they can't put it down for that amount of time, that's something to pay attention to. Like, okay, we need to have a conversation about this because I asked you for an hour not to use it, right? That when you ask them to stop using it, they have negative feelings, whether it's they're irritable, they're anxious, they're sad, they're angry, right? Recognizing it's withdrawal symptoms as though they are addicted and they need to spend more time with this thing that we're taking away from them, right? And then thinking about the people in their lives and if they're having conflicts in their lives based on what's happening on social media, like, oh, my friends want me to go out and I don't want to go out with them. I'm just going to sit here. And then their friends are upset with them. That's conflict in their life, right? So they're opting to use the phone instead of spending time with their friends, or they're getting into fights with friends around social media or on social media, or because of how much social media they use, or because of something they've done on social media, or the way they communicate on social media, all of the things, right? Looking to see, is this tool creating conflict in their life? If it is, it's time to ask for help. And then if go away from social media, right? Whether your phone got taken away or something to that effect. And then as soon as you go back to it, you're right back to where you were before. even after that period of abstinence. A lot of people talk about doing like a digital detox, which is amazing. And the research demonstrates that if you can go off of your phone for 2 weeks, it will recalibrate your brain to pre-social media usage, right? So that's not so bad, right? The longer you stay away from it, the smarter you'll get. And I literally mean smarter, in terms of your ability to perform on cognitive tests. But then after that relapse, after that time away from your social media, if you return right back to the 8 hours a day that you were using it, that means that you have an addiction issue with it, right? And so that's when we really want to pay attention to what are the things that we can do to help people get away from it. I absolutely love, love, love that schools have taken a stance on, keeping social media, keeping phones outside of the school environment, because that is just so important. I've been working to try and impact that policy for years and years. And I was involved in a study where we were asking parents, or we were asking schools, like, why won't you remove the phones from schools? And principals were saying, well, the parents won't let us. And then we did a study to ask parents why. And what parents said was, because I want to be able to contact my children during the school day. And then so we asked, well, why? Like, what is it that you need to communicate with your kids with, during the school day? The number one reason was to find out what they wanted for dinner, right? To find out what they wanted after school. And so is that a reason to interrupt history? I don't know. Is that a reason so that your children don't have friends? I don't think so. So I love that many of the states are taking that, no phones in school recommendation from the Surgeon General's report, to task. So let's just do this quick little activity. So now that you understand that's how social media impacts your brain, let's talk a little bit about the energy, right? So when you see something that you like, you get this rush of energy, this dopamine hit. That energy feels really good, and you want more, right? And then when you stop seeing it, our brain, it doesn't send us that energy, right? So that's when we feel sad. So it makes us miss that good feeling, because that good feeling feels really good, right? That dopamine hit feels really good. If you want to get away from social media, you have to identify what are the things that make you feel good offline, right? Not on the phone, but what are the things that give you that same dopamine hit? And so I would just ask you, this says identify 10 things that you would really enjoy doing that gives you that same rush of energy. But I'm just going to ask you to put into the chat, what's one thing that gives you that dopamine hit that makes you feel, really good. And I think, to work with the people that we work with, to say, like, okay, so what makes you feel good outside of social media, right? Oh, thank you. Look at you guys. Oh, my wife, so cute. Uh, Going to the gym, exercise, the beach, my dog, my kids, reading, right? So we, as helping professionals and as adults, we can really identify the things that make us feel good. I challenge you to ask your young people, whether it's your own children or the children that you work with, to really identify what are the things that make them feel good. And look, I mean, you guys are just, it's pouring through. There's so many different activities, talking with friends, spending time with animals, cooking. Those are all great things. Our young people struggle, really struggle with identifying what are the things that make them feel good. And we have to get better at that. Right? We, as helping professionals, as adults, need to work with the young people around us, um, to begin to be able to identify what are the things that they can do on an everyday basis that will make them feel better. Good job, you guys. Thank you for sharing that information. Okay, so a tool that I want to share with you is the family social media plan. Okay. And this was created by the American Pediatric Association. And basically, it's a free tool, and you can just use this link here. that helps you identify for your family what your plan is going to look like, right? So creating those tech-free zones, like I said, dinner table, absolutely not, right? It's spending time with friends a certain amount of days per week, getting involved in extracurricular after-school activities. Um, we also, and parents push back on this, we have to model that social media behavior, right? So if I'm telling my kids, you can't sit on your phone all the time, but I'm walking around with my phone in my hand, I'm not, I'm modeling the behavior of I need to be attached to my phone. And in fact, the activity that we did in the beginning, when parents do that activity with their young people, what they find is they sometimes use the phone more than their young people. And so I think it's important for all of us to be aware that our children will do what we do, and not what we say. So if they see us on the phone all the time, then they're going to be on the phone all the time. And then also teaching the positives to, to technology, like, instead of doom scrolling, love scroll, right? So go when you're looking at something, when you see something that makes you happy, like it or write to the person in a positive way. Right? Teaching them that you can use it as a tool for connection, not just scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. And there's an article about a community in Maine, right, where they collaborated as parents to get their middle school and high school kids off of social media. They all bought landlines and took away the cell phones. And so the kids, just as like many of us, you grew up where there was like a phone in the main room that with a really long cord, and you would like take it and like walk around and go outside and close the door on the cord so that nobody could hear you talking. Um, that's what this in Maine, these young people were doing. And when you asked the children, did they like it having the landlines? They preferred it much more than having the cell phones. They wanted the landlines rather than the cell phones. And so we as parents could you know, set that precedent. So, this is information from the American Academy of Pediatrics, right? And it talks about the things that you can do to help each family that you're working with create their own plan. And it's a totally free plan that's just available online, that can be a tool that you can work with families. So, this is very recent research, and it talks about ways to combat social media addiction. So, and this is for anybody, right? A college professor did a research study, and basically, what he was trying to get people to stop using their cell phones as much as they were, and to combat social media addiction. And these were some of the things that he encouraged his kids to do. If you're going to pick up your phone, you have to say why you're picking it up out loud before you pick it up, right? I'm just going to check a message. I'm just going to text my son, right? When you say it out loud, as soon as you do it, you put it down. The next one is to pause 10 seconds. Every time you reach for your phone, just stop, look at the blank screen, count to 10. If you can't wait that 10 seconds, you have a problem. If you can wait the 10 seconds, then you're in control of the situation and you need to proceed with whatever activity you were going to do. Um, Don't walk around with the phone in your hand. Don't walk around with the phone in your pocket. Keep it out of sight. Oftentimes in this training, I'm using my phone as a visual, but typically when I do speaking events, my phone is not there because it's a distraction, right? So I try not to have it available to me. And make sure that you can walk into another room without carrying your phone to the next room with you, right? So the results of just using these four, solutions, if you will, in just 10 days, they recognize that the amount of unlocks, right? People clicking the numbers on their phone dropped anywhere from 52 to 65% just by doing these simple things, right? So it doesn't have to be rocket science, if you will. But these are simple tools that we can all use to combat social media addiction. So let's talk about how we can use social media to improve our mental health, right? Let's use it as a tool. One is use it to make plans with friends, right? Like, hey, what are you doing today? I'll meet you at the park. Okay. Second, be intentional about how much time you spend on it, right? So assess your usage. You guys did that right in the beginning. And if you felt good about it, okay, fine. But if you're like, oh, I really want to cut back, pick one thing that you want to cut back from. Okay. And that will decrease your usage. Do an audit of your friends or your groups. Manage your feed. Take control of what you see, right? So if you're sitting here on social media and you're watching things and they make you feel like you see a political ad and it just pisses you off, well, change your algorithm so that doesn't come into your feed anymore, right? Because otherwise, you're literally allowing the algorithm on your social media to impact your mental health. We should be in control of the way we feel about things, not letting some algorithm tell us how to feel, right? I was scrolling at some point and I saw like a car accident on social media. And I was like looking at it, and of course, it made me stop for a minute, right? Wouldn't you know, like for the next day, all I saw were car accidents. And that's terrible. Every time I looked at my phone, I picked it up and there was like another car accident there. It was terrible, right? So the algorithm, once you pause or stop on something, you'll get more and more and more of it. And if that thing that you paused on doesn't make you feel good, take control of your feed, right? You can do that. Also, make positive posts or share positive posts or something that laughs instead of the negative content. Use social media to find mental health or to support other people's mental health online and be a support for others. If you know that somebody's having a rough day and you see a post, send them some love, right? That love scrolling your friends rather than doom scrolling is amazing. Create a routine about signing off so that you're not watching it before you go to bed. If you want to just like catch up on things before you go to bed, take 10 minutes, put it down, be done with it. Detox and allow your brain to detox before you go to sleep so you get that good REM sleep. Look for those positive replacement behaviors, right? If I was going to start scrolling on my phone, let me just text a friend, right? Or if I was going to start scrolling on my phone, put it down, go for a walk, something like that, right? And then when we're looking to decrease usage, and I said this already, right? You want to like find that one thing. So I take a lot of selfies. This is not me, but I take a lot of selfies. So I'm going to stop taking selfies on my phone, right? Just by stopping that one behavior will decrease your amount of usage, right? So, what is it that we can do? Well, reach out for help if you or somebody that you're working with is really negatively impacted by mental health. Balance your online, offline activities by creating boundaries that we just spoke about. Looking for those protective strategies. Uh, think twice before you share anything on social media and always protect yourselves and others. And if you see that somebody's, bullying somebody or cyberbullying or has written something not nice, report it when you can. Um, in a perfect world, there would be a response to that. Honestly, we have no idea what happens when we do things like that, right? So ultimately, we want you to be the change that you want to see in the world, right? So I want you to, this is like a little bit of a homework assignment, conduct your own experiment about how social media makes you feel, right? So rate your emotions on a scale of 0 to 10 before you start using social media. Next time you say, okay, I have an hour, I'm just going to sit and scroll, or you're between appointments sitting in your car, okay, I have 10 minutes to scroll. How do I feel right now? Okay, I'm at about 7, right? And then scroll, scroll, scroll. At the end, when you put it down, how do you feel? And if you feel less than a 7, well, then you might want to change something about whether you're scrolling too long, you don't like what you're seeing, you've seen something political that sets you off, whatever the case may be, right? So we can take control over that for ourselves. And I strongly encourage you to do that and to also work with the people that you're working with to help them do that, right? I love somebody just put in here to turn off the notifications. That is huge. I'm part of an online group. It's a WhatsApp group, and we all have similar, kind of political views and vent with each other all the time. And it was so much, the social media stuff was so much. We all agreed we're just going to take Instagram, like turn it on. Some of the people actually just turned off the notifications on their phone. Other people actually deleted the app from their phone. And those that deleted the app from their phone were reported, they were like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. Like if I'm on my computer, I'll look for it, but otherwise I'm not going to use it. Just deleting it from your phone so it's not as accessible gives you control over how this makes you feel, right? And we can do that. We can be the change we want to see in the world. So I want to share with you a book. This is the Connect book. It's 100 Ways to Create Happiness in Your Life. And social media is one of the chapters in the book. And there's 20 activities that you can do that can help you manage your social media. Some of them I shared with you today, but others you would find in the book. And I strongly encourage you, if you're working with young people and looking for ways to connect with them, this is a great tool for you. And this is my contact information. So you can go ahead and scan the QR and connect with me. I sit here and talk about don't use social media. And then, okay, there's my LinkedIn and my Facebook and my Instagram. So my Twitter's not working anymore. So, but I think that's really funny. And I always like jab myself about that. But because I use it for business, I'm going to just say that. And if anybody has any questions, we have a couple of minutes left to entertain some questions. Michelle, are there any questions in the Q&A or in the chat?
There was a few at the beginning that wanted your equation, how to do the math for their usage, and I put that in. I already answered those questions for you.
Oh, thank you.
But a lot of grateful attendees here. Really just people expressing gratitude for today's training. She said, will we have access to the slides from the webinar? Yes. I did put the slides in the Q&A pod, but we will put them in the chat as well too. This is so helpful. Thank you. Yeah. And just so folks know, do you mind skipping to the next slide, Julie? Thank you. Okay, so thank you everyone. I think we got to everybody's questions and everyone's expressing such gratitude. And I will say that I myself learned a lot about myself and things that I can do to better my social media addiction, unfortunately. But I feel good about everything that we learned today, and it looks like a lot of folks feel the same. Where